it's Dr. Deb. Welcome to episode 11. We're going to leave Larry for a little bit with his wife Cheryl because we want to return to Tom. If you remember, Tom is Molly's husband, and he's the one who nothing was happening in the bedroom, and he thought that it was depression and that he would be cured with pills, and he took the pills and it didn't work very long. Well, Tom doesn't really want to go to therapy. He's still very depressed. And if he goes to therapy, that means there really was something wrong with him. I don't agree with that. I hope you don't, but just in case someone out there does, that's how a lot of people see it. Therapy is for people who are all messed up. No! On the contrary, the fact is that when life has handed you something toxic and rotten, a little kid, what's a little kid supposed to do with it? The little kid does the best they can to cope. And you develop coping mechanisms, and the coping mechanisms are perfectly normal and really healthy because they keep you from pain, and they keep you from losing yourself in the pain. So no, if you go to the right kind of therapy, you should not be made to feel like there's something wrong with you. You should feel like there was something right that you did to take care of yourself, but now we have a chance to do better because you're a grown-up. Unfortunately, Tom didn't choose that path. A lot of people don't. Instead, because he had a wonderful coach at his place of business, he decided to see the coach privately. And the coach said to him, "Oh, you have an inner critic. We need to lock her up in the trunk." He could just hear his mother's voice, you know? So he decided to imagine locking his inner critic up in the trunk. He left that first session feeling empowered. Unfortunately, it didn't last. Because, see, at night, it's time for bed, right? And nothing really changed. Nothing changed in the bedroom with Molly. Molly was not too happy about the fact that he didn't get anywhere. Well, here's the thing. You can't take a part of you, including your inner critic, and lock it up in the trunk. You can't throw it in the river to drown. You wish you could get rid of that voice that's telling you bad things in your head. The problem is that voice is you. It came from you. You may be remembering the voice of your mother, father, or teacher from 4th grade. It doesn't matter. It's now in your head. It's your neurons firing away at the right moment or the wrong moment. You can't get rid of a part of you and expect a good outcome. That voice needs to be heard. That voice wants to be heard. And that voice will bother you to get heard. So you can't try to shut up the voice. And that is the biggest mistake coaches and other therapists will make. You need to go to an IFS therapist, or if you're doing family work, couples work, you need to go to an IFIO therapist. Internal family systems for couples, which is intimacy from the inside out. And that's what I do, and that's what those do who want to take IFS concepts and put them into couples work or family work. And the basic concept is based on the idea, no, nothing happened that made you messed up. Rather, something happened to you that made you react in the best possible way under the circumstances because you were just a kid and you did the best a kid could possibly do, and therefore you deserve a hero's award, right? Every one of your symptoms is the symptom of a hero. because you did what you knew to do and the only thing you could figure out to do as a child. Now, right now, you're a grown-up and here you are. Let's learn some new techniques. But listen to your inner critic. What is she or he trying to say? What is that critic telling you that's so important? Let's listen in when Tom finally finds the right therapist to go to. And he says, the critic is telling me that if I am not careful, I'm going to be mashed into the ground. I'm going to be stepped on like the big foot of an elephant just came down on me and pulverized me. And the therapist is very interested. Oh, thank you. It sounds like your critic is talking, and that's great. I'm so glad you're finally listening and not trying to lock it up in the trunk or throw it in the river. That's a part of you. Where's that coming from? Why? And Tom doesn't know. And so the therapist asks, Tom, can you find out from your critic how old it thinks you are? And Tom checks inside. 7. I was 7. Well, the therapist said, listen, this may come as a big surprise to your inner critic, but you know and I know that you aren't 7 right now. Can you share that with your inner critic? And Tom takes a minute and says, listen, I'm actually 39. I'm not 7 anymore. Inside, he says that to his inner critic. The critic is shocked, absolutely shocked. You're not a child? And then Tom laughs for the first time in a long time because he's been so depressed. And as he laughs out loud, the therapist is curious what's going on. And so he shares, well, my inner critic thinks I'm 7, and that's very funny. So he tells the inner critic that he's actually 39. And the therapist says something to Tom that his parents, whose voice the inner critic probably took on, never said to him. His therapist says, Tom, I believe in you, the real you. Can you tell your inner critic to give you some space to handle the stuff that's coming up instead of chewing you out and making you feel bad? Now, Tom feels a little bit better, we have to admit, because you see, instead of throwing this poor child, the inner critic is 7 years old in his brain because it thinks he is 7. So instead of throwing that little kid inside of him in the trunk of the car or in the river, instead he's doing what a good parent does to a child, which is reassure the child, which is why the whole method of therapy is called internal family systems. You're the parent to this little family you've got inside of your heart and soul and mind. So anyway, he is reassuring the critic, and he does feel better. Getting that critic to stop bothering him, even for a few minutes, does lighten the load. So Tom is now ready to start dealing with his depression in a new way, because he has taken the first step to separate his true self from this voice in his head that's criticizing him and putting him down all the time. Now, I want you to understand something, and this is critical. We all have those voices. No one can say, oh, I don't hear voices. Of course, we don't hear something that sounds exactly like a real voice, but we get messages, don't we? We have arguments with ourselves all the time. This is normal. It can't keep bothering you. So that is exactly what Tom is now embarking on. And I invite you to try the same thing for yourself. Go to my website after you subscribe here, right? go to my website, DrDeb.com, DrDeb, and subscribe to my newsletter there, which is free, and get a free download of a meditation I made just for you to do the same thing as Tom. Clear a little space in your head for yourself, your own true self, the voice of your own self to be heard, finally, without all those parts of you that are just trying to protect you, but steering you off course sometimes. So, to get back to Tom, the most important message that Tom gets out of this first visit with a brand new therapist is that there's nothing wrong with him, but everything right with him. Because under whatever circumstances he had, he coped. And even depression is a coping mechanism. Because that little boy that's 7 years old telling himself, you better not screw up or mom's going to tan your hide, is just trying to help him. And sometimes you don't have an inner critic that's quite so violent, physically violent. That doesn't mean that inner critic isn't going to be harsh just the same. Your mom could have said things like, why are you failing that course? Aren't you smart? Aren't you as smart as the other kids in your class? That doesn't even sound like a criticism, right? It just sounds like a question. And a little kid of 7, what does he know? How does he know to answer that? How does he know to say, Mom, it kind of sounds like you're putting me down. Can't you just accept me for who I am? What little kid can do that? He can't. It's not possible. Little kids don't think that way, at least not without some help. So having that voice kind of preempting his mom is just trying to help him to get to him before his mom does. If this makes sense to you, comment below because I really think this is key. All right, you guys. See you in the next video.